Hello, Chris.
Hey, Vijayta, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Chris. Shall we
Great.
start?
Sure.
Okay, Chris, what is today's topic?
Today's topic is going to be page instructions, Vijayta. So I'm going to talk about what page instructions are in Graphite.
Great. Let's start.
Okay. I touched upon it last time. We'll go into it in detail. Okay. So what page instructions are is how do you update the browser from the server side when a UI event happens. So when you click a button, the click sends the information, maybe submits a form back to the application on the server. Now the server has to update the page, maybe with search results or something like that. So instead of replacing the whole page, you just want to only partially update the page. So what happens is you create page instructions in your on-click flowchart, and you send those page instructions back, and the browser one by one executes the page instructions to do different things. And we look at the samples when we continue the webinar today. So basic structure is when you click a button or you change a drop down or whatever it is that you do in the front end on a view element, the view element will then make an AJAX call to the server, and it can pass parameters when it makes this AJAX call. So that AJAX call ends up in a flowchart that starts with on. So it's on click or on change or on select or whatever it is that you have set up behind the view element. Not the onload view. Onload view is called when the page is initially rendered. Any other behavior that starts with on. That behavior now, if you look at the output of that behavior, it'll be a list of the page instruction object. So at a variable name called page instructions. Basically, whenever you use the shape called page instruction, it gets into this list of page instructions, and then that list is returned as a JSON object all the way back to the client, to the browser. Now the browser then processes each one of these page instruction JSON objects to do stuff on the screen. And so that's what we're going to see in detail today. So there are, I guess someone's drawing on the monitor. Thank you. So there are 5 different types of page instructions, which we will see in detail today. The first one is a value instruction. Value instruction is used to update titles on the screen, values of fields, like headings, things like that. In some cases, it'll help you update colors. In the case of tabs, it'll help you update the statuses of the tab header. So basically, you can use it to do simple updates on the screen. The display page instruction is used to hide or show view elements on the view. So if you want to hide a button or hide like a whole map, or you want to hide a table or show something that was hidden, you can use the display instruction. You can also use the display instruction to lock and unlock fields in a form. So you're showing a form. Let's say some of the fields have to be locked. You can use that instruction to, at the push of a button, if you want to lock something, then you can use that page instruction. Content instruction. Content instruction is the one that will update a whole view element. So you can append, prepend, remove, and replace content for a container view element on a view. So let's say you have a table on a view, like a grid, and you wanted to add a bunch of rows to the bottom of the table when a user pushes a button, or replace the rows, the whole table when they do a search, then that's when you would use replace or append or any other content instruction. We'll take a look at that example today. And then you have the navigate instruction. So let's say you're on a page, you push a button, you do some logic, and then you want to navigate to another page, you'd use the navigate instruction. Or if you're on a page or a modal and you push a button and you want to close that modal, you can use the close page instruction. And you can also change the language or the theme for that particular logged in session. Again, I have session within quotes. Graphite does not do fixed user sessions, so it builds a completely stateless application. So, but it passes the user information back and forth from the client all the way to the server. So you're guaranteed to create a high-performing, scalable enterprise application. The fifth page instruction is a notification instruction. Basically, if you use this instruction, you'll see a notification that pops on the screen. You can set up different properties to slide it in and slide it out and things like that. So with that, let's take a look at a sample of a page instruction. So I'm going to go into Graphite. I'm going to open up one of the first chapters that we worked with. This one. So when you see this calculate button, I'm going to push the control key on my keyboard and push the calculate. It takes me to that widget here and shows its properties. When you click this button, the flowchart that's going to be called is the on-click calculate button flowchart. And you see 2 page instructions here. So I'm using the value page instruction. And so let's redo this page instruction. Okay? So here we have called a flowchart called calculate simple interest. We passed the flowchart 3 parameters. It returned a variable for us, and inside that variable there's another property called outputs. And in outputs you have a property called new interest, which then which is an object type called interest, which will then have a property called amount inside. We want to take that amount that's inside the interest object, and we want to simply update the value of this particular view element, which is a heading. We want to update the value of the interest heading. Now, how do you do that? So you go to the on-click button, and remember, this flowchart returns a list of page instructions. And we'll see this in debug mode. So what we'll do is, without even having a page instruction, let's build and deploy this application. Here I have, so I'm going to put 5,000, 6.5, let's say duration 8. When I push calculate, calculate is doing something, but there's no update on the screen. It didn't update this interest heading, right? So let's see how that works when we set in debug mode. So I'm going to set up a breakpoint in on-click calculate button. I'm going to start a debug session. And I'm going to go back to the browser and push calculate. As expected, breakpoint stops in this flowchart. If you look at the outputs, page instruction is null. When you see empty in Graphite, that basically means null. So it's not been initialized. So it's a null list. Graphite automatically creates this shape where it initializes that list. So when I step over the first shape, you will see now the page instructions is initialized into a list, but there's nothing in there. In the next step, we call the flow chart. So we basically call this calculate simple interest, and it is going to return us this new interest inside this variable. So new interest, calculate simple interest result. So when I step over this, you will see that you have interest, calculate simple interest result. It has outputs. Outputs has that new interest variable or property in which it has amount. So we're taking this amount, and our job is to update this interest heading, right? This interest heading. The problem is we're not doing it. We simply save it to the database. And if you notice, before we go back to the client or to the browser, page instructions are still empty. So when you go back, it doesn't do anything. So let's go modify that. I'm going to add a page instruction. I want to update a value on the screen, so I'm going to do the value instruction. In action for value instruction, there's only one. You update an element. In this case, I want to update the value of that element. What element is it? The interest heading element. And what am I updating it with? Any variable that I have, or a string or whatever you want. In this case, I'm updating it with the amount that came back from the output of the flowchart I had just called. I click OK. And let's go do a build. Purge previous builds. And we're going to refresh the page. Here we go. So it's back in a debug mode. As you can see, we got the page instructions initialized. We called the flow chart. We got the output. We got the 2600 there. And here we're about to do a page instruction. When I step over that, notice how now page instructions got one instruction in it. And this is the detail for the instruction. It's of type value instruction. The instruction is value, action is update element. So it's a basically an instruction to the browser on what to do. So now when I push continue, you'll notice that it updated that view element. So when you push calculate, it called the flow chart. Then the flow chart sent back page instruction, and the JavaScript behind the browser basically executed that page instruction. Basically, it looked at the JSON and processed it. If you want to go into deep detail, if there are people on the call that know JavaScript very well, I'm going to show you the method that processes page instruction. This is where it starts. So this is where the AJAX call comes back from the server with the data from the server. So let's say we push calculate. We go back to the server. Server returns page instructions. And you notice the page instruction data has page instructions here, and it has one instruction. And basically, the rest of the code in JavaScript updates this page instruction. Now let's just add another page instruction and see what happens. Let's do a simple page instruction called notification instruction. And it's a slide right, title, say hello. And let's say duration 2 seconds. So of course I knew what to type here, and I'm going to show you a document that lists all different page instructions that are available that you can use. So I modified a flow chart. So let's go do a build. Refresh the page. While it's refreshing, I'm going to switch off the debug so we don't keep stopping here, okay? Here we go. And there's your notification. So let's do that again. So it did one instruction to update this and one instruction to show that notification. So that kind of shows you how you can accumulate page instructions. Once again, let's set a breakpoint there and see how the page instruction list gets affected. I push calculate, it comes in here, it goes through this, it adds one instruction to this list, and then if I step over the next instruction, it adds the second instruction. So there are two instructions to process on the browser side. So when we push continue, you got that one and you got that one, both those. So you can accumulate any number of instructions in your flow charts, and you will basically all of those will be processed on the client side. This page instruction shape will only be available in any flow chart where the outputs is set to be page instructions. So if you don't have this page instruction set in the output, you will not find this shape here. So let's go take a look and see what I mean. So let's say instead of writing all your code in this flow chart, you wanted to split it up nicely. You may want to put a behavior here. Notice there's no page instruction shape, but if I add in the outputs, a list of page instructions, you'll notice that the page instruction shows up. So that's something to remember when you're coding. Now I want to show you a document that will show you all the page instructions that are available in Graphite. So if you go to the Knowledge Center, and if you go to References, there's a document here called Graphite Studio Page Instructions. If you take a look at this page instruction document, it'll explain every page instruction that you can do in Graphite. In our case, we updated a heading. So what I would do is I would just simply search for a heading. And here we go. How do you update the title of a heading? You click on it, and you can see that this is how you fill the page instruction. So you go back, you add a page instruction, and you literally follow it. You say value, you leave it current, you do update element. I did value, but you could do title and the heading on the view. So that's our interest heading. And then title can be a variable or a translation key and so on. In this case, I was updating the value, so you can put the variable there. So, using this document, feel free to use page instructions. And of course, in the Knowledge Center, you have all these sample projects. These sample projects, almost every one of these sample projects has the page instructions that they need. So let's take a look at a page instruction called one of those content page instructions. I'm going to open up a project, and this is going to be a sample project that is available in the Knowledge Center. Let's run this application. So I go to environments, I have the link here. When you're in debug mode, sometimes you get that error. So here I have a page. I'm going to choose that drop down. I push go. You kind of have a search screen here. Okay, so basically you have a search field, you push the search button, and you can refresh this. So when let's say I put 1 here and I put search, notice how the page is not refreshing, just that little panel here refreshed. So if I put 2, it just refreshed that. And if I remove everything, we search, all of the projects come in. So how do you do that? So on the click of the search button, I'm passing all these parameters back to the server. Server executes a lookup, data lookup, and then it builds each one of these display details and adds a page instruction to send it back and update this panel. So let's see how I did that. So again, you know the name of the page, it's basic view. So in order to go to this project and find it, I paste it here. It shows me the page. There's the page. And as we can see, what we saw here and what you see here in the preview looks same. So here's the panel, the project panel. So if you click on it, that's the heading, and that's the panel, and the panel has a list of display details. So the Graphite Guide Chapter 2 should teach you how to build project panels and project details, or display panels and display details. So assuming that you guys went through that chapter. Now we build this project panel, but when we click the search button, we want to refresh this area, right? That's what we're looking at, and that's where we'll be doing page instructions. So on the click of the button, it calls a behavior which goes and does a data lookup and searches based on the fields that you entered. So the click sends you all the fields in the form. You then pass it to this flowchart, which returns a list of projects. And using that, we call another flowchart, which goes through each one of those projects and builds this project details. Once you get the project details back, how do you send it back to the page? That's where you use the content page instruction. So in this case, I'm using the content page instruction. I'm replacing the content in the project panel with all the project details that I just built. So if anyone has questions during the question and answer session, ask me, I'll review that. Otherwise, by going through this display widgets project, you'll be able to understand how the content instruction works. Because we went through some complex stuff, I'm going to stop and open up the session for discussion. Vijayta, we can open it up for discussion, Vijayta.
Sure, Chris. Participants?
Okay, great.
Any questions? Pratik, Bhaskar, Shantanu? You can unmute yourself and you can ask questions.
Oh, there's a chat. Okay.
So they say no question so far.
Yeah.
So any other thing you want to highlight, Christopher?
No, that would be good. Today was a pretty complex part, so I wanted to keep it very simple so people can like take it all in.
All these participants are already part of WhatsApp group also. So hope all
Yeah.
of you have downloaded and started working on Graphite.
I think we're good with today's webinar then, Vijayta,
Yes, Chris.
if there are no questions.